Hello to everyone, and thank you for being here tonight for the conference 1 year after in Ukraine. Thank you for being here with us today. The interpretation is available at the bottom of this screen. You will see a little interpretation button. It's a little globe, and you can have interpretation into English and German. In the chat and on the screen, you will see the instructions to help you use this interpretation feature, and there will also be a link to our donation page for Ukraine. There is also a tool that is available for Q&A. During the call to ask your questions, feel free to use it. We will try to answer as many questions as possible, and if we don't manage, then we will send you an answer by email later. Céline Sissa, bienvenue, who was supposed to be here to answer your questions, is unfortunately ill, so she won't be able to join us, and we hope she feels better soon. However, today, there are 4 of her colleagues who work with her on a daily basis. So we have Charlotte von Croy, Katerina Kirsta, Marina Ergemnitz, and Natalia Gozak that you can see on screen and that we will interview later during the call. As you can see, there are many people today. Colleagues from the whole world are here to thank you. They wanted to be here to thank you for your support, and especially in Ukraine. This support allowed us to carry out huge work, and today we will see what we've done there in Ukraine with the help and support of our colleagues. For those who don't know IFAW, it's a 50-year-old organization for rescue and conservation. And the association is recognized as such. We work in about 40 countries. So I don't know if you can see the titles of the people that are part of the call. They live in different countries. So here you have a reminder of the instructions to use interpretation. And for those who come later, there will also be explanations in the chat. There is also a questionnaire that we would like you to fill in if you have some time. And so we will come back to IFAW's response in Ukraine. And for that, I will show you a video. I imagine that some of you know it already. It's a video of a refugee who's called Alina. She was helped at the border. And I will now launch the video. So this video is subtitled into French and it's in English.
This feels like a dream right now. So I feel like I might wake up at any second and end up in the basement again. My name is Alina Petrovna, and I came across the Polish border today with my mom and 3 rescued cats fleeing from the war. Traveling with animals added to the stress of trying to survive because they had no idea why they were put through this. We couldn't explain it to them. I knew there were rescue missions here focusing on the animals specifically. I'm just surprised to find this level of help and this quick response and just humane attitude. Back in Ukraine, I had to endure people telling me that I have to abandon the cats and just run for my life and not think of anyone else. People who think an animal's life is worth less than a human life are very different kinds of people compared to my worldview. So today, Shannon took us to a veterinarian clinic. They vaccinated all 3 of them. They gifted us carriers and cat food and everything we might need. I don't think I have processed what has happened. I think it will hit me later. I have my mom to take care of, and I have 3 cats. But if something remains of Ukraine, I would love to come back. I would love to pay it forward. I would love to be of service. I just don't know if we can make it through.
So today, Charlotte von Croy will join us. I will give you the floor, Charlotte. First of all, could you introduce yourself? and tell us where you're based.
et nous dire où es-tu basé?
Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I work for IFAW as a disaster response and risk resiliency officer in Europe. I'm based in Belgium, but I work for the program in France and in Europe in general.
Et que faisais-tu du coup
What
pendant
were
que
you
tu étais
working on for IFAW before the beginning of the war in Ukraine? I was working on our program for emergency response in Europe. It's not a new program. It was structured in 2005 in the US during the Katrina hurricane. The American authorities were helpless, and that's why they decided to contact organizations such as IFAW, and they relied on us to be able to deal with the animal situation and to focus on saving human lives. So Europe is being more and more impacted by disasters. They are more and more common and stronger, as we've seen in the last few years, with many events striking our continent, such as the Alex storm in France, the fires in the south of France, floods as well, about 2 years ago in Germany and in Belgium. So this observation has been confirmed by the new IPCC report and by the EU Commission that insists on the fact that the disasters and the risks of disasters will increase in the world and in France too, and also that climate change will change the distribution of some infectious diseases. That is why 4 years ago, we started mapping France and Germany. So we mapped the areas that were at risk of disasters in France and in Germany. And we also mapped the animal populations that live there and that can be vulnerable in case of a disaster. So that helped us have a better idea of the territory, the area, of the stakeholders, and also of the vulnerable animal populations. Then gradually, we built up the emergency response program in France and in Europe, doing some lobbying at the national level, but also before the EU Commission, so that the animals could be integrated in the emergency response plans. Then the war in Ukraine started, and the program was sent to the heart of the topic.
Et du coup, que faisais-tu au
So
moment
what
où la guerre a
was your
éclaté
role
et quel était
on the
ton
very day the war started? How did
quotidien
it
actuel en tant
change
que
your daily life
chargé
at
justement
IFAW because you were in charge of emergency response? Well, actually, it changed many things. It accelerated the process. I had just filled, completed a report about the situation of animals during disasters, natural disasters. So we have a plan with different phases. The first phase is the notification. So we are warned that there is an ongoing natural disaster. Then there's the standby phase. So maybe we will roll out, maybe not, because there are no needs. And then there is the rollout phase. So it's the green light to start our actions. We have to know that we must be very flexible because between the standby phase and the rollout phase, there are only a few days sometimes. That's what happened for our rollout at the Ukrainian border. Celine and myself arrived in Warsaw in Poland. We met the person in charge of animals in Poland. And we have to know that Poland was the country that welcomed the biggest flow of migrants. So this person that was responsible for animals during the crisis indicated us two places that we should visit. So it was a station and a border point. So these were the 2 points that were used by most of the Ukrainian refugees in Ukraine, fleeing from Ukraine. So we decided to establish services to refugees and to their animals for the refugees that were crossing the border. So as you can see here, that is a 24/7 service that was established there. So it was a quick veterinarian control to reassure the owners about their pets and their animals. And then we offered them some equipment, so leashes, bowls, and also pet food and water for their pets. So in 2 months, we rolled out 7 vets, 6 translators between Ukrainian and English, and there were 43 responders to ensure this 24/7 service under the rain, the snow, and sometimes in sunny conditions as well. We also supported the Polish vet staff at the station of Prešlo, and the Polish authorities were in charge of microchipping the pets. And obviously, they were quickly overwhelmed, so we offered them some Ukrainian veterinarians that were displaced and that we hired. And Veronica is now part of our team.
Oui, donc Véronica qui est tout en bas
Veronica
à
is
droite.
on the top right corner. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us today, but she was part of this rollout. And we have a video from her. In this video, you can see her working at the press mill station. Evacuation trains that arrive carry a large number of people and pets. To enter the EU, all animals must be vaccinated against rabies and microchipped.
Вони мають бути обов'язково мати щеплення від сказу і обов'язково мають бути чіповані.
I came here to help our refugees and our animals because there's a language barrier. And it's easy for me to communicate with people and explain what we do and why we do it. I would like to say a big thank you to IFAW for allowing me to be here and help the refugees and work, which is very important for me right now. I want to thank you for your help, for everything you do for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much for this video. Veronica couldn't make it today, but she was here through video, and today her colleagues are here, Katerina, Marina, and Natalia. They can't speak French, unfortunately, so we will now switch to English.
Again, thank you, Katerina, Marina, Natalia, to be with us today, with knowing that you're based in different parts of the world. And thank you again for giving your insider view, working on this project on a daily basis, and also as a Ukrainian, to kind of share your experience with us today, with our donors, with our supporters, and with us. So I'll start with Marina. Marina, can you first introduce yourself and maybe tell us where you are based?
Yes, of course. Hello. Hello, everyone. It is my dog and me on the pictures you can see now. My name is Marina Ergimlidze. Originally, I'm from Ukraine. I was born, raised, and built my career in governmental communications in the capital of Ukraine, in Kiev, until 24th of February 2022, when the war has started. And now I'm based in Brussels. I have been living here for 1 year and working for IFAW for 5 months.
Oh, thank you so much. And can you tell us, please, like what were you doing the day of the war when it started? Like what was your day like?
Mm, Actually, world and Ukrainian press was continuously talking about the coming war of Russia against Ukraine, and I didn't believe in it despite my engagement in governmental communications with high-level officials in Ukraine and planned celebration of my father's 62 years. On Thursday, 24th of February 2022 at 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up to a very loud bang. Immediately, I reached to my phone and learned from local publics that the missile crashed into an apartment building next to my house. So I realized that the war has started, and the first thing came to my mind was do I have enough pet food for my dog? Because precisely at that moment he had suspected cancer and was on a special diet, and non-compliance with vet's prescription about food could turn to the dog's life-threatening consequences. So I had some dog's feed reserves, and I spent 1 week. In war Kiev, in crowded bomb shelter in my building. There were a lot of people with dogs, cats, hamsters. All the pets, they were very calm, scared, refused of water or food. And in February in Kiev, it was very cold in the bomb shelter, which was the underground parking area. And first days, I was like hesitating whether to flee or not. But when there were talks in media about using nuclear weapons by Russia, I decided to flee. So I took a little suitcase, like hand luggage size, packed it with my dog's food, laptop, documents, and went off in the trains, buses to Brussels. Unfortunately, I didn't see IFAW blue tent because I crossed the border through another border crossing point. But it was my story of evacuation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it must be difficult as well to remember. But now, so can you tell me, just as a dog owner, how much of an extra challenge it added besides knowing that you had, of course, to bring pet food? Was it easy for you to be able to safely go in another place?
As you may know, even traveling with a dog is a bit challenging. When we can speak about evacuation, when animal and its owner are stressed, scared, it's really stressful for both of them. And for me, the most problematic was finding specific food and accommodation where pets were allowed to stay. So it took maybe one week to reach finally safe destination to me, and then I could feel finally stress relief.
Yes, I understand. Well, thank you so much. And can you tell us a bit more just about your daily work now that you work for IFAW, for animals, and for the Ukraine project?
In my case, there was some luck in this misfortune. Since childhood, I wanted to be a vet or work with the dogs as a trainer, but I received a psychologist and political science degrees. When staying in Brussels, I started looking for a job. I came across it I for vacancy for an advocacy work for Ukraine, and I could not believe my luck. I've passed hard in interviews and joined to IFO team. And before joining IFO, I gathered many years in public relations and advocacy in Ukraine, so that I know what advocacy is and what is lobbyism is. So probably I thought it is my destiny. So as an advocacy officer at I4 in Brussels, we call it EU office. Primarily, I'm focusing on raising animal welfare standards in Ukraine. So Ukraine is a big country. It's a country with an area of 604 square kilometers, almost like Spain and or France, washed by two seas, bordered with 7 European countries, had 40 million people before the war, and furthermore, there are a lot of animals suffering from cruelty, problems with breeding exotic animals for trading, private ownership of wild animals, as well as illegal trafficking. So you can only imagine how many pets, wild and farm animals in Ukraine are in need, and now during this human-driven disaster. And to protect all these animals, it is crucial to change the framework, to change the legal basis in Ukraine. So I'm involved in this process. And on the other hand, I'm also involved in advocacy activities to support IFAW disaster response in European institutions. I maintain relationship with key stakeholders and trying to lobby also in European institution legislation about animals in disaster, including animals in disaster rescue programs, because animals also matters, not only people, but animals.
Thank you so much, Marina, and thank you for sharing your experience and also making our supporters understand also the need to push for that change and to include animals to save people when saving animals as well. And I'm turning to you, Katerina, so I just want to ask you to introduce yourself and maybe tell us where you're based.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Katerina. I'm Ukraine Rescue Project Manager, and I'm based in the Netherlands. Originally, I'm from Kyiv, from Ukraine, same as Marina. Unfortunately, we haven't met with Marina before because Kyiv is still a very big city. So we've met in IFAW, and I'm happy to work in IFAW starting last October.
Thank you so much. And can you tell us also a bit briefly, where were you and when the war started? What happened to your daily life?
Yeah, when the war started, we were on our family vacations. We were skiing in Kaprasians. This is our annual thing, was our annual thing to do in February. So we went there for holidays, and that was Thursday morning when we found out that the war started, and there was like 2 days to go till the end of holidays, and we were supposed to come back home on Saturday. Plans that never happened. Yeah, back then I worked at a World Bank group in Ukraine and technical advisory projects related to agricultural finance, but life has changed so dramatically starting February of last year. So I decided to follow my heart and do things that are really impactful. So like working with animals, saving lives, these are really a mission that drives and inspires me.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Katerina, and with our supporters. As a project manager on this Ukraine project and overseeing this project, can you tell us like what is the reality of the impact on animals in Ukraine before and after the war, according to your experience?
Reality is sad. Unfortunately, reality is sad, but this is the way, this is the situation that war brings. Unfortunately, we have too many abandoned animals. Ukraine used to have lots of stray animals before the war, but with the war started, number of them has really increased because not everyone was able to flee the country, to flee the place where they lived and take their animals, as Marina, for instance, did. Many families like had no capacity to take their animals. They were leaving animals with their like neighbors, and then neighbors were fleeing and leaving animals behind. Some animals, some families got their accommodation destroyed and life destroyed. So like many animals just appeared on the street that were not used to live on streets. And we see that capacity of shelters was already pretty full before the war started. But when the war started, each shelter took almost as twice much animals as they had before the war. And shelters are not able anymore to finance themselves using financial models they used before, because they used to fundraise at local market. Like Ukrainian people were supporting local shelters when it comes to like certain communities, certain areas, people living in that area were supporting shelters. But the war has brought so many negative changes, let's put it this way, to ordinary life of ordinary people, that they were not able, they didn't have any more capacity to donate to shelters, to animal welfare. They had other emergency needs to think of. So like lots of animals are applying to IFAW asking for help. And we see that unfortunately not all animals are receiving place in shelters. Lots of them are still on streets, and there is a high risk of spreading animal diseases in Ukraine. So we as an organization run some vaccination programs to help prevent those diseases.
Yes, and so when you talk about vaccination, so what type of like vaccination you encounter most that is most needed? What type of disease is the one that like is most spread, for example, in Ukraine?
Luckily, it is not yet well spread, but we see the high threat that there is risk of rabies in Ukraine. So we run mostly vaccination against rabies, but also we do vaccination against different infections like leptospirosis, etc. We see there is a big need to vaccinate animals, both that are in shelters, stray animals, but also family-owned pets, because families are not in capacity now to provide proper vet care to their pets. But apart from vaccinating, we do lots of other important and useful things in Ukraine.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Feed, Heat, Treat initiative that is for those companion animals, and which is like around 20,000 vaccination for pet animals. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We run a Feed, Treat, Heat program for companion animals, which stands for Feed, Treat, Heat, and we have ambitious goals on vaccinating. We target to vaccinate 23,000 of pets till the end of June, and as of February, we were already like at the level of having 9,000 pets vaccinated. And originally we started with family-owned pets. Later we expanded our work also on shelter pets. And apart from vaccination, we do a sterilization campaign. And for that, we have a target of 5,600 pets. And we are close to reaching that target already in April, because there is a really big need of for sterilization of stray animals in Ukraine. But apart from treat and working with vet clinics, by the way, we work with 18 vet clinics across the whole country in 5 regions. Those clinics are under the umbrella of Ukrainian vet association called IFAW. So this is our strategic partner with whom we deliver vet services of a high professional level to pets. On top of vet program, we do feed component. We source and deliver pet food to pets. We work directly with shelters, but we also work with distribution organizations that in their turn work with individual shelters. We source pet food as on like purchasing from local manufacturer in Ukraine, but Ukraine also is getting some pet food donated from European suppliers, and for that we cover logistic cost to help bring that pet food to the end user, to actually pets that are living in shelters, they're like far away from warehouses. So we are really focused to feed as many pets as we can, and we are talking about like dozens and dozens of tons of pet food that is being shipped to shelters.
Oh, I know that it has impacted a lot of companion animals, and I mean, just looking at that map and all the grants and all the help that it has been spread out just for that Ukraine rescue and response does make me think about now the wild animals that were caught in that crossfire. And for that reason, I turn to you, Natalia. Natalia, can you also please introduce yourself quickly, briefly, what you do for IFAW and where you're based, before we can talk about the incredible work you do for wild animals as well.
Yeah, hello. I'm Natalia, and I'm based in Kiev, Ukraine, and I used to work in conservation and environmental civil society organizations in Ukraine for almost more than 15 years, and just recently switched and joined the team of IFAW.
Thank you. And so I just want to ask you, what was the situation in Ukraine with wild animals before the war, and how did that war impact today those animals?
First of all, I should mention that the war didn't started a year ago. The war started in 2014 when Russia invaded in Crimea and in the eastern regions of Ukraine. And on February 24th, that was actually the full-scale invasion, which all of us and the Europe and actually all the world really impacted all the world. And coming to the wildlife and wild animals, I should say that Ukraine is a really biodiversity-rich country in the European terms. We have a few very rich areas like Carpathian, Danube Delta, Crimea, which in general is hosting 35% of European biodiversity. And definitely war, military operations, economy decline, all these factors are putting more and extra stress to wildlife in the wild and to the wildlife in captivity. What I see is that the shelters or sanctuaries, which used to keep wild animals, they have the super combo suffering, if I could say so, because from the one side, which was already mentioned, the funding sources declined. The funding which these centers relied on could not be supported anymore. Like, people don't provide so much donations inside the country as they did, or they don't visit the centers or zoos to the similar extent, so the income reduced. Then human capacity really dramatically changed, because some people joined army forces, left organizations, some left the country, some suffered from, changed the life. So people able to work with animals are much less available. And then amount of the wild animals suffered increased. Also, what is relevant to the community animals in the shelters, also pretty relevant to the wild animals, because they are more impacted and more directed to the centers or shelters.
And so like, now that you mentioned all these types of conditions that made it much more difficult, and thank you again for correcting me about the war and the official start of the war. So what type of work do you do on a daily basis for IFAW? What type of help do we provide for these instances, these different types of issues that you encounter in your daily work?
Mainly what I do is I'm doing the field visits now, and I directly go to the sanctuaries, go to the shelters which are doing rehabilitation of wild animals, go to the centers working with wild animals or the zoos, talk to people, see and check the state of the animals, the well-being of the animals, and find how IFAW could help them, what change we could bring there, And in the cases where it's possible, where we could really make the difference, we provide the help what is needed. So this could be feed, this could be supporting veterinary care, these could be supporting the operations, which they now cannot support. Sometimes repairment of what is of the enclosures or the facilities which they cannot support. Or also part of the work is evacuations of animals outside the country. And that's also a huge part, because this is about supporting partners on the very complicated logistical routes, starting from Ukraine to Poland, then to the final destinations where the animals could find their way. For example, you could see the lion cubs, which like not a long time ago successfully were moved from Ukraine to Poland and then to US. And now they are really living full lion life and secure life in the wildcat sanctuary.
Yes, and you can see that on this, like on the slides as you speak, actually, like the evacuation of I think it was the last 3-4 line camps that some of you supporters have helped with. So you can see that now. Thank you so much for that, Natalia. I know we have so many questions. I have so many questions to ask you, but we have to get going because it's almost time for us to leave, and we have lots of questions. But first of all, I just want to ask all the speakers maybe one thing from you. If there is one thing you can recommend, Katerina, Marina, Charlotte, Natalia, working on that project, if there's one thing you can recommend to donors to do to help, what would it be? Marina, maybe you can start.
My phone. Yes, of course. One thing from what would I recommended, I would recommend to it's maybe something not about, it's not about money, but it's about very important thing about talk to your mayor, talk to your local authorities, and push them to include animals in humanitarian aid programs during the disaster. People treat their pets as family members and refuse live in dangerous areas. And it is crucial when rescuers, when authority know how to act and react while evacuating people during the fire, flood, and such a human disaster like war. So my recommendation, I would suggest you push this topic on the agenda. It's very important to prepare society, to prepare authority, and to help them understand why it is needed.
Thank you so much. What about you, Natalia? What would you recommend for a donor who really wants to help you save wild animals in Ukraine? What would you recommend?
I would definitely recommend never stop learning. And for for helping animals in Ukraine, definitely supporting IFAW is important, but for supporting animals in where you are, it's important to continue learning what could be done in the different situations, like when you find a small the bird in the spring, or what to do when you see the injured animal or whatever. Never stop learning. That's my advice, because the situations are so much different and it's so easy to harm the animal rather than really provide help. So it's important to know what to do.
Thank you so much. And so Charlotte, what about you? What would you recommend working on the more larger European disaster team?
I would recommend two things. So first of all, if you have animals at home, if you have pets, to prepare an emergency kit for your animal in case of an evacuation. I would also suggest that you follow our disaster response program in Europe.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And finally, Katerina, before we move on to our donors' questions.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. my colleagues gave very good recommendations. Really hard to add anything, but I will just say that please take care of your pets. Please vaccinate them. Make sure they have passports with them. So this is what we can do before the disaster hits.
Thank you so much. And I will just add quickly to maybe share this video, share our messages, subscribe to the newsletter, also make a gift is always very efficient. And basically, I will now turn to you all for your questions. We've received already a good amount of questions from our donors, and we thank you for actually taking the time to also submit them beforehand. So we will get to the first question that we have here, and it is from a certain Jacqueline. So Jacqueline is asking, are there still mines on the field? And how do we know that associations need help? So when do we know that associations would need our help? So I invite, maybe Katerina, you were talking, maybe you want to.
Unfortunately, mines are still there. So all forest steppes, big territories are still under mines, and we monitor situation like what government reports to see how situation develops. But unfortunately, most likely it will not happen tomorrow or next week. So it will require some time. But when it comes to helping local associations, we help them already now. Like they approach us, they ask for help, and we provide them an emergency need they require today.
Where do the supplies come from?
Mainly shelters and distribution organizations are able to source supplies within Ukraine. But there are also some donations coming from European suppliers that are being distributed later on in Ukraine.
Thank you. And last question from Jacqueline as well. So what are the criteria for assessing whether an evacuation is necessary? And I believe that this is more like Natalia. You talked about evacuations. Are there criteria that you would consider when evacuating animals?
Yeah, clearly the situations are very different, and the main criteria is that the welfare of the animal is really undermined. And first stage of evacuations is bringing animal from the direct war zone front line or the newly deoccupied territories. In these cases, animals are rescued as quick as possible inside Ukraine. The next stages of evacuations connected to whether the rehabilitation process is already done. So the lion, the bear, the wolf, this animal is okay. In most cases, they cannot be released back into the wild, like lions are not living in Ukraine and bears are mostly affected. So they have to, so we find the new lifelong places for them to live. And this next stage of evacuation is bringing these animals to these new homes for them. This is could very often be abroad, and some animals travel mostly inside Europe to find their final homes.
Thank you so much, and I know that we are running out of time, that you're about to leave yourself, Natalia, because you have to hop on a train. I will just end with you that last question, and I welcome anyone who wants to stay a bit more just to hear the last questions, and we can stay until 6:50 just to get around the next couple of questions. Natalia, like I have a question from Marion. And she wants to know how the animals are doing in Ukraine, but she's giving specific examples of animals or in zoos, like for example, the Kyiv Zoo. Are animals okay there? Is the elephant in Kyiv still alive? The Kyiv Zoo is still alive? What are the prospects for the future? And what can we do to better help those animals?
Yeah, so if we talk about Kyiv Zoo, I was there just the last week. I saw the elephant. There is one elephant, the young male Horus. The name is Horus, and he's very fine. He was in his wintering enclosure, very happy eating the food. So he was totally fine. And in general, Kyiv Zoo really survived very well. The staff was incredibly motivated and adapted in the most critical first months of the full-scale invasion. So as far as I know, they lost no animals beyond the usual, let's say, levels. When we talk about other zoos closer to the front line, especially there is a Feldman Eco Park Zoo near Kharkiv, which appeared to be on the very front line. Most of the animals had to be evacuated very quickly, and some of them lost or escaped. So still there are stories about some animals wandering all over the Kharkiv. And mainly this is the most affected, the complicated situations. Animals are now distributed all over other zoos. Kherson, which was under Russian occupation but then liberated, the animals were also affected, and yeah, the situation there was also difficult. But a part of these two major locations, I would say that more or less zoos survived, but suffered definitely from the decline in financing, but otherwise the people are really dedicated to doing amazing job to make those animals survive.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for taking the time to answer. And I know that you may have to leave very soon right now, actually, for your train. So thank you again for being with us today and for taking the time to share your experience and your knowledge on the Ukraine rescue for our donors and our supporters. Thank you again so much. And I'll switch for those who wish to stay a bit more, a few minutes more, to some next questions. Someone asking, and that would be Anya, how long does it take for populations to recover after the war? And are there any fur farms in Ukraine? Because we see a lot of people with furry colors.
To my best understanding of the current situation, most of people and animals will not fully recover from the war. This is a kind of lifelong trauma that will forever stay inside of them. But we as an organization really trying our best to help them to go through to help animals to go through the most difficult period of their life. And we know that lots of animals that have heard some missile attacks, they are now getting really easily scared of any loud noise, and this is something that might stay with them for a really long time. But we're really trying to do our best to help them in a worse period of their life as they're experiencing today. And with regards to fur farms, honestly, I have never come across of any, so probably I'm not in a position to answer this question. Probably some of other people on this call can comment, but honestly, I don't know anything about fur farms. I know that Russia is quite famous for wearing fur during winters.
Yes, I understand. And I just want to take the opportunity to say that any questions that you continue to post on the Q&A will be answered in a later email. So a recurring questions that we have here is that are cats and dogs repatriated in France? Are they taken from Ukraine to France? And can we adopt them? And how do we do to help you on the ground in Ukraine? So maybe Charlotte, you would want to answer that since it's a French question.
So we do not repatriate dogs and or cats to France or Europe as IFAW. as we're trying to help them in Ukraine and support local shelters and organizations, but also help us in Ukraine locally. This is why we created this Ukraine rescue project that Katrina has told you about, and why we created also the Feed, Heat, Treat initiative. However, I think other organizations might do it, but as IFAW, we do not repatriate domestic animals to France or Europe, no.
Yes, thank you. And just to add that we do encourage people to adopt here in France,
Yes.
so that incoming
Also,
pets can have some space as well. You know, so it's to be the most efficient possible as well in the way we approach this. How can I join you and be active on Ukrainian soil with animal parks and especially in neighborhood veterinarians? This is a question from Isabel, and I give the floor to any of you who wish to answer it.
Coming to Ukraine now could be quite risky because the war does not happen only along the front line. There are like every week some missile attacks, even on like cities and towns located close to Polish border. So it's a very big uncertainty how safe it is in Ukraine now. So it might be quite risky.
I will be wrapping up now, just to be respectful of your time and respectful of our supporters' time. Thank you again for joining us today. We mentioned a few ways to help us. You already helped us on the Ukraine Rescue Project, but feel free to again subscribe to our newsletter, to make a gift, to talk about IFAW, to talk about the Ukraine Rescue Project, the way Katrina, Charlotte, Marina, and Natalia did today. And we really thank you for the bottom of our hearts from IFAW for all the work that you managed to allow us to accomplish for animals there and still up to today. We would like to just maybe show you a few opportunities, upcoming opportunities to meet us in France for our French donors. So you will see on the screen right now some dates where we will be with the IFAW France team, including in April, June, and November. So, of course, we will be communicating to you any other opportunities through social media or by email. So please feel free to subscribe to know about them and so that we can meet and thank you face to face as well. So thank you again. And thank to all for sharing your good insights, Marina, Natalia, Charlotte.
I wish you a great evening. Thank you for your participation and your support. See you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.